It is Ersatz Natterjack.
Oh, hi folks. I like stories and I like telling stories. However, I will require some aid. I have two books from which I will require words to be given whenever I point to the person who has that book. I have chosen two books. One is 4 sermons, The History and Principles of Nonconformity and The Relation to the Church of England. Who would like to give me words from this book? You are miles away. Can you read from there? That is fine. As long as you can read, you're very welcome. Good. You'll need to be loud. The other book is The Voice of Victorian Sex. Katie is holding a hand up. Back on the toy shop games. All right. Sexy times. So the way this works is that when I want a word, I will point in your vague direction. I will point, I guess, basically down to get something from Victorian Sex, and more or less up to get something from whatever the fuck that book was called. So we're going to do a story. Might we have, to inspire me and to sort of fuck it up, can I have a genre of story that I can not... Space opera. But good. All right. So I'm choosing this so I can fuck it up. All right. Cool. The year is 8492. Remember it because I won't. Space has been colonized. It is filled with both human and alien species. The aliens are known as
June.
What?
June.
June. The aliens are known as June. Weirdly, it's a big sandy planet. Shocked to hear, big sandy planet called June, full of weird alien people. Their mortal enemies, the
Christians.
Their mortal enemies, the Christians, are engaged in an endless bloody war. The Christians, motherfucking humans, desperate to defend their murdered God, are fighting constantly against June, a land of sandy people, a world where worms rise to the surface and emerge as near humans. They leap into space, turning their own bodies into spaceships, and within their own bodies, tiny microbes grow into homunculi, which become the warriors they will send forth against the Christians. The year was
8492.
8492. January of 8492 to be precise. The first big battle took place between
The Roman Catholic Emperor.
the Roman Catholic Emperor, symbol of the human Christian church, was launched into space on a rocket. He was a tiny little man in a giant bubble rocket, shot into space. Basically, the reasoning was thus. The Christians concluded they can't win against the sand gods of space, but what they can do is jettison their only hope. That'll solve everything. So, through space, the Pope flew in his tiny little bubble car. His name was...
Cotton Print.
His name was Cotton Prince Smith. He was a lovely little fellow. His mum had been a wholesaler of Granny Smith's apples, and they'd had a lovely relationship. As a child, he'd eaten so many apples that for a little while he turned green, but no dentist would see him, no matter how awful his teeth got. So by the time he got to space, his entire mouth was falling apart, and his only real weapon against the people of June was his horrific halitosis. You see, within his little bubble spaceship, you could see it from the outside, filling with this noxious vapour. He was in risk of smoking himself to death. It was terrifying, and yet, from out of the cosmic fog, from between the dust that lies between the stars and the quasars, and the rifts in space and time that occur occasionally, sometimes suck someone into a whole different reality, which really fucks them up. In between those things, he floated and he drifted, and yet there was hope. There was
Mary, Queen of Scots.
Mary, Queen of Scots, who had fallen through one of the aforementioned time rifts some centuries earlier and had been launched into the stars. There, she had attained her ultimate cyborg form. Mary, she bore on one arm
Religious needs.
religious needs. Man, it's this big fucking flaming sword full of weird sexual desire, and someone else slapping it saying, "No, bad! No, touch your nuts! No, bad!" Mary Queen of Scots was powerful. Her other arm, however, had coffin. Her other arm was a coffin, and within it, the bones and skeletons of all the babies that she'd born in space from her weird magic womb. They'd all died, so sad. On the one hand, she had the flame that denied sexual power and appreciation and happiness. On the other side, just fucking death. She was the first thing to see the Pope drifting through space in his face fart-filled cube of horror. She saw him and swam through space because it's basically like water. And she rapped on the glass at this terrified little man inside, and she asked,
Evasion rather than confrontation.
Of what?
Evasion rather.
Oh, all right. And she asked, evasion rather than confrontation? Because those are your two options. Do you avoid a threat coming at you, or do you fucking go for it and see if you can take it on, mano a mano, in the big, deep, dark space? Well, the Pope was a tough old fellow, even though you could barely see through the halitosis-stained clouds around him. And he cried,
Archbishop Cranmer.
Archbishop Cranmer, is that you? I said, no! I'm not a fucking archbishop. Look, one arm's a flaming sword of sex pain, and the other arm is a coffin of doom and sadness. And I went, oh, that's not what I was hoping for at all. I thought it'd be like, I think it'd be Thomas Cranmer. He was a friend of mine back in 1832. And then we set up a tea shop together, and a whole industry in which we basically trafficked tea and opium from China all the way into Europe. And so she's like, that's way after my time. I don't give a fuck. I've been lost in a time drift for centuries. He went, oh, that's very sad. Why don't you come inside my spaceship and we can chat? And he's like, yeah? I guess so. I'll just come in through this portal here. She entered the dome full of like weird, horrible eructations from his gaseous teeth. And she said,
effectively, it marks the end.
effectively, oh, what the fuck? This marks the end of our alliance. She grabbed hold of the Pope and she flung him into space. The dribbling vapour travelled behind him. He was as a comet scorching through the skies. Unbeknownst to Mary Queen of Scots, she had begun the end of the war. For as the Pope burned an arc across the galaxy, his vile, noxious gases erupting into sparks as they passed by, suns and moons blowing whole galaxies into dust in an instant as they caught light, and the Pope's own breath inflamed huge populations of people. He was the greatest mass murderer known to the galaxy as he flew through to his ultimate end. However, on the planet of June, there was
The Great Schism of Christendom.
the Great
Schism.
the Great Schism of Christendom, because some of those June fuckers, they weren't all into being giant worms and going into space. No! The plague of Christianity had reached even June. And even there was a fight going on between, I'm a massive fucking worm dude, and, I'm a little Christian. I will consume you. And, well, the worms won. As you would imagine, that's pretty much how that went. That was very sad. However, the remains of those Christians lay in their worm-like bellies, were slowly passed through from one end to the other, not knowing which was a face and which was an arse, because they were worms, and so they weren't really sure if they'd been sucked in through the rectum and passed out through the mouth, or sucked through the mouth and passed out the bum. It was hard to tell, but they were Christians, so it didn't really matter. Anyway, the worms prepared their strategy. They had
Casual rhyming.
Oh, that would be so hard. They had casual rhyming. And so they would say such things as, hey, you, let's go to war, or maybe not, let's just do it raw. And thus, the planet June was wrapped up like a ball of fucking worms, just really going at it, like a king rat king. But of worms, just fucking nailing each other, not knowing which end was mouth and which was orifice. They were basically happy until the worms realised that you could put one worm inside another, and another worm inside another, and again and again and again, until you end up with a super worm. A worm so filled with other worms that they were bigger than the planet. They swallowed the planet of June, and they didn't know again which end it went in or which end it went out, but they crashed the planet of June inside them. And they saw, in the stars, a comet shooting bright across the sky. And they knew, this is our enemy. And they cried,
Queen Elizabeth.
Queen Elizabeth, it's our time once more! Because the people of June obviously have been tied to the Christians for a very long time. And they had a long historical problem that was related to it tied in the monarchy to the habits of worms. Basically, a long time ago, there'd been a worm farm in the Palace of Westminster. And one of these rifts in time had occurred where the worm farm formed a vortex that sucked in Queen Elizabeth, and she'd become a kind of a, not so much a god, more of a mascot to the Dune people. They held her as a...
German.
They held her as a German.
Which she fucking was! They're not English, guys, they're not!
They're a weird German/Greek royal family. But in space, that meant nothing other than this is an adorable German mascot that they like cuddled and took out for treats. So the worm monster god launched himself into space, hugging his tiny German queen to him. In space, there was
An impassable gulf.
an impassable gulf. That's called space. Undaunted, the superworm flew across there and collided with the Pope, who was flying on his vitreous gas-filled nightmare across the galaxy, and struck the superworm so hard that he passed all the way through the guts of the worm, shat out the back, and exploded, setting light to the entire worm in a rippling sausage bag of nightmare fire. And then plunged into the sun and also died.